Well, my dear Bulas and Beras, it is time once again. It is a very early morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. Elsa's even awake as well, not doing dishes today. In fact, she's actually editing videos, which I'm quite excited about. Plenty to talk about today, as we did see follow through on traditional markets, gold, and actually some of the altcoins that we're looking at. Looks like Mr. Buteral was the leader to keep an eye out on, and Bitcoin surpassing the short-term and medium-term time frame range, of which there is now plenty to talk about. Well, usually when I said there's plenty to talk about, like there's actually in the past, like there's actually a whole new price range, but we'll take what we get here with Bitcoin as it kind of slogs on through. Anyways, plenty to talk about on the Krown trading application, which can be found at app.krowntrade.net. It is free, and it's also, I think, linked in the description below. Open interest shooting up above 1.9.5 billion, so we haven't really seen it this high just yet, as Bitcoin does surpass the short and medium term time frame range. And while realistically, we still don't necessarily have a set history to kind of interpret this off of, it is very, 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 very interesting here nonetheless, because the next sort of major piece of price action that I'm looking for is a break of the high term time frame range, which is still actually the same as what we've been seeing before, even with the changes in the short and medium term time frames. So I really want to see what the open interest kind of prints with regards to that, because again, this is all novel information, as I don't really know anyone else mining this sort of data. Bitcoin dominance taking a massive nosedive here, 63.5% it looks like, and that means that most alts are rallying versus Satoshis. I'm gonna imagine that that's Link, Mr. Buteral, and perhaps a few others. So we'll take a look at them today. And crypto fear and greed index taken up to a 43, but still in the fearful zone. And this is one of the more consistent things that's really been remaining about this whole run from about 4,400 to where we are right now. Bitcoin in the fearful zone the whole way. Even though Bitcoin's more than doubled off the lows, it's still like one of the bigger things in the back of my mind, alongside the strength in traditional markets, that says, if there's one reason to not be bearish, this or I guess a few reasons to not be bearish, that would be it. So I do want to kind of keep that in the periphery, but oh yes, before I forget, all the programs are on sale for the midsummer sale for 20% off for the time allotted up top, which is too hard to say. Anyways, all the programs do have videos that accompany them, as you can see right here. Definitely make sure to watch those if you are interested in them, because it's going to go into depth and in much more detail than I will right here on kind of like who they're for, who they're not for, and from there, you are free to make the decision for yourself, which I think is the most healthy way to do it. Most importantly, though, before you kind of even watch the videos, just make sure that you have enough time to actually invest in those programs. If you are interested in, especially the TA program and the options program, they're going to take a very long time, especially the options program, because you need kind of a decent base in TA to begin with, or at least in the way that I do it. Of course, there's plenty of options traders out there who don't know anything about TA, but I do think that you can really get a lot more out of it just by knowing some basics, which are actually covered in the Neophytes program, which is not as big of a commitment, and that's probably a better stepping stone, I suppose. If you're a little bit unsure, but you do know that you want to get a little bit into the trading game. Other than that, what else do I want to say? Yes, we do have the jewel here as well, of which forgot to call it a couple signals yesterday, but then again, that's why we have it. And also Mournfall has actually started the jewel channel, which is linked below as well, which goes over all the signals and released to the public on a weekly basis. And for the jewel members, make sure to ask him questions in the jewel channel. That's what it's for, and he'll answer it via video, and you get literally the creator to speak about it. The 3-month package actually does have a 20% discount, so if you do want to commit to a little bit of a longer term, then you'll be rewarded for it. As far as the partners programs, of course, we do have the new PineScript Mastery. So if you do want to learn from the man himself, Mr. Mournfall, about how to code your own indicators, that would be it. Now, I forgot to mention this, and I really, you probably hear me harp on this like a shit ton, and I think it's just really, 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 really important for the TA program, the options program especially. Understand that these programs are not only just very long, but also, what's the word that I was looking for? It'll come back to my mind soon enough. But most importantly, with those programs, I I think I just lost my train of thought. Let's go look at some price action, and then we'll circle back around maybe if it's relevant. Okay, cool. So looking at Nasdaq futures right here, we did see new all-time highs coming into the new week, as we said was likely, and I believe that we actually have hit one of our targets based off of that lower turn. No, sorry. Let's go to Nasdaq futures. Yeah, there we go. We did hit one of our targets coming out of that base from that Nasdaq set in the last couple of weeks, going back to early June right here. I would consider this essentially target hit on that first one, and yes, I would be looking for it to back off a little bit from that target. Maybe spend another day or two spiking up into this region, but I do think that we play out a little bit of short-term downside, probably back down to 10,400, 10,450-ish region, and then probably set it up for another week continuation. But I would like to see how the next weekly close, as we did see pretty much the easy move from that kind of occur, and so far so good. This is an incredibly powerful rally right here. I want to make, obviously I was not actively trading in 2000s when the .com boom was happening, but I was actually a clerk for a trader at that time, and I've actually been speaking with him more recently as well. He's not necessarily, he is kind of like a mentor to me, but he's not necessarily the person that I refer to when I talk about my mentor. And it was very interesting to hear him say that he kind of looks at this price action that we've been seeing in traditional markets very similar to the .com boom in 2000 and 2001, which you see a lot of like the mid caps and whatnot actually like doubling or tripling off their lows, which is really, 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 really impressive. And while I do think that this has, a lot more to go, or, maybe not a lot more to go, that's more of a term of perspective, I suppose. But I do think that 11,000 is very much possible. Before the next like major potential pullback. Overall, this is at some point, well, let's go back to 2000 and 2001. You do get something like this, which I thought was interesting that he said. However, while things are looking very, 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 very good here, and I wouldn't necessarily be looking for any sort of a major crash to happen, just out of the blue right now. I would say that, caution at these higher levels is certainly going to be of the essence now, especially as long as this thing is still above about 95 to 9,600. There's no sort of like major threat of a massive downside move like that. But I do think that, it was interesting to hear him say that because when you go through experiences like that, which I'm sure a lot of people did in 2017 with altcoins, it conditions you to kind of recognize it in the future, and I feel like that could be going on here. But I want to be very abundantly clear. I don't think like anything like that is going on right now, at least with the way that price action is. Maybe a few months down the road, maybe another year or two down the road. I imagine that a lot of it's going to be based off of this next election, actually, as we do see a very politically driven market, which, it does say a lot about the times that we live in right now. But without getting political myself, and this is not a political statement, what I would feel very comfortable in saying is that if Trump is reelected, then we probably do see some more years of continuation in traditional markets to new all-time highs and beyond. If anyone but Trump is elected, meaning Joe Biden or Kanye West. Actually, I don't know Kanye West's policies there, so who knows? But if it is someone else, then very likely the market will come down. I do remember very lovingly in 2016 during the prior election between Trump and Mrs. Clinton. Somewhere, where was this? Like somewhere right around here? Nope. Oh, wow, we got to go way far back. Let's go to a weekly. Yeah, there we go. Maybe it was back all the way around here. Yeah, back around here. Every time that a new poll would come out that Clinton was leading the race, the market would come down. And of course, when Trump actually won, which no one was really expecting, as far as major publications go, the market just went up and it didn't stop going up. And well, as you can see right here, that kind of led us all the way out of this base from about 4,900 on NAS futures all the way to where we are right now, which is more than doubled, which is very, 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 very impressive. So again, not a political statement. I don't really support any candidate, or I don't love or hate any candidate. I just want to live my own life, really. But overall, this is one of the times I should be paying attention, because we live in such a weird, bizarre political era right now. it's actually hilarious. I do think that it's worth paying attention to. But for right now, yes, I do think that short term probably does back off this area a little bit, and then seeing how we close the week, maybe comes back down to like 10,400, 10,450-ish region. But depending upon how we close the week, I'd probably be looking for continuation up to the 11,000 target over the next month or two or whatever it ends up being. Looking at mini futures for SPY, same sort of thing here, except not as strong. Looking at the daily, this is still a pretty damn good chart overall. The golden cross seems to be picking up more and more momentum to the upside as the 55 and the 200 do diverge from each other more aggressively now with that last move to the upside. Now, I did say yesterday that I'd be looking for another continuation drive into the 320s this week. I believe that that's kind of what we're seeing right now. It did get up to about 318 and a half. Not necessarily into the 320s just yet, but I do think that this is still in the process of trending here, and I would remain bullish on SPY futures as long as it's above about 313, we'll call it, or even just yesterday's low, whatever that was. Yeah, about 312 it looks like. Overall would look pretty damn good. And even if it did actually take that out to the downside, I would look for a return back down at the very least to the 21, but very likely the 200 simple all the way down at the low 3,000 region, and then that likely sets in another higher low, or at least gives another chance as the trend here is still your friend essentially. Looking at a weekly, I do like the continuation drive right here. And in anywhere above 323 region, especially, I'd be targeting another $100 move to 330-ish region and fill the gap up here, and probably beyond as well. But it's very clear that Nasdaq is leading this whole charge. As far as gold goes, and we haven't even spoken about Bitcoin yet, but that's because I just don't think Bitcoin's the most interesting thing right now. And at some point, if Bitcoin just fails to move while the rest of the world is fucking moving up, it's not a good sign. It does speak to the relative strength or the relative weakness of like the tier of which of when your favorite stock or when your favorite asset moves within the greater market cycle. And the fact is Bitcoin isn't moving with all of the leaders right now, which does insinuate that it is relatively weak in comparison to them, but probably does also get a chance as well just because the world market is so girthy right now. Looking at gold though, we are getting that next drive to the upside as well, as we spoke about coming into this week. And I do think I don't really have anything to change here. Still looking at 1800 plus, probably like 1830 before the next major, maybe not even major, but short-term, medium-term pullback. I mean, shit, even looking at 1830-ish region, I'm realizing that there's, yes, there is a few things in the way over there. And we have hit the measure move off of this formation right here. So, you typically do expect a little bit of a pullback off of a target being met and people taking profits. But overall, I'd really extend those targets on a weekly schedule to more so around 1900 actually. Now, does that mean that it's going to happen this week or next week? No, probably not. But all higher time frames are still bullish. So I do still think that on a monthly schedule, especially seeing as we did print a new high on this month, very likely that it does gun for those regions over the next month or two, whatever it ends up being. All right, let's go check out not even Bitcoin. Let's go check out Mr. Buteral right now, as Mr. Buteral did hit the target that was spun upon the taking out of what was it, 30th of June's highs we spoke about yesterday. So I did say that yesterday, while I was actually bearishly biased on Bitcoin, Mr. Buteral was the one that was kind of like actually looking decent, and we did say that taking out the 30th of June high at 233 and a quarter would very likely spin off a move toward, or catalyze a move towards 243, 244 region, of which that move was had on the same day. So pretty damn good there. And what's also interesting about Mr. Buteral here is that it's very clearly making a bull flag. Your classic bull flag right here. It's not. I'm not drawing this super perfectly. So if you're shouting at your screen like, Krown, what the fuck, not parallel, not right, then just understand I'm just doing some lazy drawing right now, man. In order to kind of plot this one out, but overall it would actually come alongside a measure move as well. And if we were to apply it to the breakout point, which is pretty much with a closure above, let's call it 244, technically for the flag formation. And if you do want to look at this as more as like a rectangle, then you could say 248, 249 region. I think both of them get it. We would have a measure move pointed towards the next, or sorry, towards the prior high that Mr. Buteral put in middle of February at about 280, 290-ish region, and that would make the whole chart look a lot more powerful, a lot more impressive. And we did speak about this earlier yesterday, that Mr. Buteral was very likely to head back up to the 200 exponential moving average on the weekly, which it has now. So I think we need to go to the Poloniex chart actually to get a more in-depth history on this one. Yeah, okay, there we go. Okay, now we actually have some history. We can look at all these major moving averages. Golden cross on the weekly, good. 200 simple governing highs at 260-ish region. Do want to keep that area in mind, but anywhere above there, and yeah, I would be targeting 300. The problem is though, is that the 200 simple is still underneath the last prior high that we saw in February of this year at about 275 on a weekly closing basis. So that means that, you know, if Mr. Buterin does respect that area, then we're just going to be putting another lower high, and that would be coming in right alongside this trend line right here. In fact, they actually meet up quite literally right on top of each other at the exact same point. And that's, the white 200 simple is right here. That trend line is coming in right there. And so as long as Mr. Buterin is below there, it you know, technically trend is still down, yes, but you can see that there are things shifting around here, especially with this golden cross, which, to be fair, you know, hasn't had too much time to really transpire itself. But you know, it makes a very difficult dynamic. But I would have to say that with this sort of turning around on the 10 simple right here, it does look like it's going to try to put in a higher low on the weekly. And if this is a higher low, then, well, we have low, higher low, high, higher high, higher low. And, well, I would be at the very least looking for a test of 260, and that's going to give it a chance to actually break above there. And then we can talk about a target towards 300, which would be in line with the measure move that we spoke about coming off of the shorter term time frame bull flag right here, which I do think is, you know, if you want to look at it like a textbook bull flag, this would be a pretty damn good one. Do have that nice ascending volume coming in from the highs. Do have a nice orderly structure and riding above all major moving averages as they do maintain a positive slope. So this is a little bit more of an obvious chart than Bitcoin right now, and we do see that momentum oscillators are falling through as well as the daily Stokes do head upwards and onwards, and we do see that daily RSI, while it is okay, so we actually do have something interesting here. With the daily RSI, it does actually have hidden bearish divergence potentially in it. It is not in any way, shape, or form confirmed just yet. But if it does set in a local high here, we actually will have a higher high printed on RSI versus a lower high in price action, which in the context of technically a daily downtrend right here, as you know, you have your high, low, low, right? However, what would it take to actually confirm this as a local high? Well, we need to go down to a lower term time frame to even remotely get something like that right now. And it's actually kind of difficult. I would say that there is no real talks of this being a lower high or a high at all. As long as we're closing even 4-hour dildos above about 238 region. Second that we close below there, yes, it does look like it's going to come under pressure and at the very least target to move back down to 233.5, the breakout territory from yesterday. But as you can see right here, the 4-hour has golden crossed as well, and consolidated at a high level is typically a good thing, but I would keep that area in mind because that would initiate that hidden bearish divergence on the daily and very likely bring things back down into the same zone that we saw between the 55 and the 21 right here. And as you can see, you know, I think this is a little bit more obvious on Bitcoin, but and we'll go to Bitcoin now. Hey, Bitcoin, get over there. You know, for the last month or so, ever since early June, so I guess almost a month and a half now, you know, we've been seeing these very strange. Well, it's not so strange for Bitcoin. We do see this actually like quite often for Bitcoin, but you know, Bitcoin gets like these immediate pumps up, kind of out of nowhere, you know, after having lulls to the downside, and then gives it up almost immediately. You know, you see one right here, or you see one right here, see one right here, see one right here, and then it gets very aggressive in the past month right here. You know, you come out of this base, looks like it's going to have continuation just right before the breakout trend line. Or sorry, let me go to my chart that actually has it plotted in. Yeah, there we go, the blue box territory right there, and then boom, major move down. Then the same thing over here. It spends like a week going sideways, doing absolutely fucking nothing. And what happens then? A pump out of nowhere to start off the week, and I believe that this was literally on like a Sunday or Monday as well. No, a Monday, very likely. And then what happens over the next 2 days? Just sets in another lower high, comes back down, and then comes into this accumulation zone right here, if you want to call it that, if you are looking at it as such. And then what did we do more recently? Well, same sort of thing. So I would be skeptical of this. Yes, it has broken the short-term areas, and I do want to follow up from what I said yesterday as well. I do think, I did say yesterday that if Bitcoin did take out the 9,300 high or close a 4-hour dildo above 9,250, very likely we will see continuation to the $9,550, $9,600 range. am I going to be wrong on that, or is this still in the cards? I do think that this is still in the cards, but there's a very obvious dynamic going on right now, which makes it tradable, which is more important. So regardless of my opinion of whether this works out or not, this is really the concept that I want to relate to people right here, because this is what trading is as I know it. And the only reason why this has a nice dynamic is because there's a very obvious entry point and there's a very obvious risk management point. And if you are taking this as a long trade or even a short trade, there's a very, the targets are well documented with the blue boxes. So what do I mean by that? Well, for example here, and this is a little bit of an insight into the TA program at a very, 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 very basic level, but I do think that it's appropriate to talk about right here because maybe that is what I was trying to reference earlier when I was searching for my words. But overall, you can see that as long as Bitcoin remains above this level, yes, I do look for it to actually head up to the blue box territory at about 95.50, 9600. That is a valid trade idea, but it's a valid trade idea because there's a very obvious risk management point. If Bitcoin does break this blue box back down to the downside, then that's obviously not what's going on. And seeing as Bitcoin is currently trading at 92.90 and that in the lower end of that blue box is 92.60, that's a pretty reasonable risk management point, or at least for myself, my risk management appetite, which everyone's different, of course. That's actually quite preferable. So if I was going to take both, I could take both a short trade and a long trade here. Well, a short trade is going to be a little more difficult to manage because, you could use the high of this. If this is going to operate as a lower high, then, you really want to see it turn down from here. So there would be a pretty obvious area to manage off of. But my point is that, if you are taking the long right here, you have a very obvious or very clear risk management point back down below that level. Or what you could also look at is just a 4-hour 200 simple. So either a 4-hour 200, not 200 simple, but 200 exponential moving average right here. As long as Bitcoin remains above that on a 4-hour closing basis, there's no local high to really be spoken of, and the name of the game is continuation up to the next blue box territory. But as you can see right here, Bitcoin is coming under a little bit of pressure. Did almost put in a nice Darth Maul dildo right here, or did put in a nice Darth Maul dildo here, but not necessarily a bearish engulfing, which is typically indicative of a reversal. So I would hold on to that. So there's two ways to document this one and confirm this one as a local high if this does switch back down around. And I'm saying all of this not as someone who's actually actively even trading it. And I want to be very deliberately clear with that because I think it's important to be transparent with my positions. Now, I do trade options in this sort of a range right here because I think that it's a little bit more preferable when things are in the greater in the midst of the greater range, which again is 9,900 to like 8,900 right there. But what's going on right here is a couple things. So first things first, how do we confirm a local high on this one? Well, like I said, if it does close a 4-hour dildo or even a 2-hour dildo below 92.50, yeah, I would consider this a local high, and I'd look for a move back down to 9,000, 90.50 low. Somewhere down around here. Maybe it even gets another wick into this blue box territory right here and just pisses the shit out of people going sideways for a little bit more time. Fair enough, can definitely happen. Or as you've seen before, it's kind of been getting walked down after those failed rally attempts. The other way would be to wait for the daily. And if the daily does close above the 21 exponential moving average, that would obviously be good. But if the daily does close above the 21 exponential moving average, and it looks something like this, where we have that wick down already testing the 21, which is at that 92.50-ish area. Funny how that works out, by the way. And again, it closes above something resembling like this. And then tomorrow when the new daily opens, it comes down and takes out this low. That would likely do it and confirm it as a local high as well. But it's only really relevant as a local high with regards to initiating that hidden bearish divergence if we actually have the same sort of read on or potentially on the on daily RSI, which we do not. So that would be a little bit more of the bullish view right there. So very interesting as to what's Bitcoin's doing. And remember yesterday that daily Stokes were going to cross up if we closed above, I believe it was 91.50. Obviously that condition was met as well. So we are seeing momentum oscillators turn back up as Bitcoin does surpass the short and medium term time frame range. So technically speaking, I should be biased if I was trading spot on this one to the upside to that 95.50, 9600-ish level. Now, of course, I'm sure that people are going to yell at me for this one because I typically talk shit about this, but why not? On a day that's relatively slow compared to other markets, and why not talk about something like this? And that's this right here. Very rarely will I plot out diagonal trend lines, especially on fucking wicks to begin with. But it is relevant that it does still work here. It's just I don't like managing trades off something like this because it's very ambiguous. So it's you never know exactly like where it's going to be. But technically speaking, you can see that there is resistance coming around this level that has been governing our last 1, 2, and potentially 3 highs. So there is that in the card as well, or in the cards as well. But for me, levels are more important. But I do think that for the purposes of thoroughness, it's important to mark everything off, well, or at least as much that is reasonably possible. What's also very interesting about the last 24 hours of trading period since we last spoke is the 2-day and the 3-day specifically. The 2-day did have a nice girthy close above the 21 exponential average and also the 10 simple right here. And as long as it's essentially maintaining 2-day dildo closures above that level, it's hard to be bearish on that, and it does look like we want to see another move back up towards the $9,700 region, which is do we have any sort of divergences to be spoken about here? Yes, we do. We do have hidden bullish divergence on this one, technically speaking, between this point and this point. This is a slightly higher low compared to this guy right here, a little bit further away, but it does satisfy the criteria. And what are we looking at if that is going to play out alongside 2-day Stokes crossing back up to the upside, which will remain to the upside as long as Bitcoin price action remains above 9,000, which makes a very good pivot for the downside, by the way, on a 2-day closure for looking for continuation to that level. But basically, the target that I'd be looking for on something like that is actually a little bit higher than the short-term and medium-term target that I was speaking about earlier. So now we're making a relationship between the short and medium-term and then now a 2-day time frame, which I consider probably a higher-term time frame. And these are all subjective again, but this is the terminology that I use because it's relevant to myself, and I'm giving my analysis mostly for myself as well, and it would initiate a move very likely back up to this region, a couple $100 higher than the short and medium term time frame range, likely between about 97 to 9,800ish region, maybe even as much as 99 to 10,000. But still, the whole thing with this price action here is that it's very dubious. When it comes down to this area right here, has it officially broken down? I was arguing, yes, it has. I think maybe I'm a bit too premature on that one, looking at spot price action now, and that's just going to be marked up as Krown being wrong. But to the upside, same sort of thing as well. 9,900 to 10,000 is still the area to beat for an actual confirmed upside breakout. And then I'd be happy to talk about, very likely a move to 10,500 at the very least, and extremely likely up to, or I shouldn't say extremely, if this is very likely. This one's extremely likely. Very likely, however, to see the full mesh move hit up to about 11,000, almost 100, and then realistically we can talk about the macro at that point. But for right now, it's still a little bit further away, so I do think that it's more appropriate to focus on the short and medium term time frame ranges here, and kind of stick to my guns going from range to range. Is that, well, that's the way that that's quite literally the way that I trade. So yeah, what's good about this is that the levels are very well documented, but I am I am a bit skeptical to see that Bitcoin did not get that continuation in $9,550, $9,600 region. Granted that the conditions were met yesterday, taking out that $9,300 high. I think maybe that was premature to be looking at this as your next lower high, and it very well could be this one, especially looking at the descending trend line that we see coming off the daily. What I also want to look at is the good old Bollinger Bands over here, of which they're still squeezing quite a bit. And this is an interesting proposition right here, because as long as we are above the 20 simple moving average, which is just this gray moving average right here, that's the median Bollinger Band essentially. You're technically supposed to be looking for a test up to the top Bollinger Band. Of course, there's a lot more to it than that, and I'm really massively simplifying what it represents there. But there's a couple other things that we should be aware of, and that is the slope of the 20 simple moving average, which is still to the downside. So today's closure, it's not necessarily today's closure that is super important. It is important, yes, because it essentially clarifies like the more immediate situation, but it's tomorrow's daily dildo that's actually going to matter quite a bit, as that should give a nuanced perspective or more clarity on the daily picture. And again, I can't really get too ahead of myself here before this one sets in, but But depending upon how it reacts today, it should leave up a nice edge for tomorrow and really solidify whether we will be seeing that continuation drive to at the very least 9,600 or 9,550, or if Bitcoin comes back down into the danger zone in the low 9,000s. Bringing up the momentum oscillators right here. I haven't really been talking about the daily MACD, but to be fair, did see it cross back up to the upside, and more importantly, as that is not complete in and of itself, we did see that cross back up to the upside alongside breaking the 20 simple and also the short term and medium term resistance at that 9,300 or sorry 9,250ish region. So to me, that usually is a good turning point. To be fair, what is problematic is the weekly, which is a higher term time frame, which does mean that it takes precedence here. And we do have obviously hidden bearish divergence between this point and this point, and that holds a lot more weight. So how does that work out as a dynamic over time? It would say that on a daily schedule, probably better to err on the side of bullishness. On a weekly schedule, well, you can have a nice move on a daily, but does that relate to, but how many dailies make a weekly? 7. So doesn't really help all that much. You can have 3-4 days of bullishness, right? Or upside moves, but the weekly can still remain in its own territory. So looking at this right here, I'm still skeptical of this, especially seeing as the 20 simple on the weekly is actually all the way down at 8,100, which is also still kind of like maintaining about a flat slope. And anytime that it does have a negative or flat slope, you can see that, well, that's this major drop off right here. That's this major drop off right here. That's this major drop off right here. That's this whole down segment of 2018 right here. And going all the way back to 2014, 2015 right here. And a fake out right here, to be fair. But all the other examples working like a fucking charm. So, if I had to kind of wrap up the point that I'm trying to make right there, it would be essentially that I'd be forgiving of some upside in the short and medium term timeframes here. I do think that that's still that would be my main read as long as we remain above this pivot. But there is major question marks in the back of my mind's eye, and again, while I would like to be bullish overall, that doesn't really happen until this area right here. Although plenty of ranges to play in between, and this is kind of like an options trader's dream because everything's very well defined, relatively easy to manage spot versus options covers here, and time is on your side essentially. So that's really what it comes down to. Let's go take a look at CMEs as well. I think that this is very, 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 very much worth talking about here. The 4-hour death cross was quickly reverted pretty much as soon as it happened. Now the golden cross has kind of emerged from that, and it will obviously continue to strengthen as long as Bitcoin remains above this pivot, which is all the way down at about 92.85. So a little bit of give right there. And you can kind of see the ranges a little bit more accurately here, which is interesting because it's not looking as obvious as spot price markets for Bitcoin in the sense that it has cleared that level. In fact, in this one, it's still kind of maintaining that downtrend on the 4-hour. However, moving averages are floating around in a way that makes it a little bit difficult. What I do want to check out is any sort of divergences, which looks like no hidden bearish divergence here, but do we have regular bearish divergence? Kind of a very, very small amount, yes, between this point and this point, but I think that, if it played out back down to the 55 exponential moving average right here, oh, it's kitchen time, baby! Start up the fucking faucet and clean those dishes. I can't wait to eat a shit ton of food later. Anyways, looking at this area right here, yeah, it does offer up a nice natural pivot, and obviously it's kind of like a war here between lower highs being governed by the 200 simple and potentially higher lows and reversal of this short-term and medium-term trend by riding the golden cross on the 4-hour. Now, 4-hour Stokes obviously are way up there, which is fine. I don't really have a huge issue with that, but let's see what would it take to actually cross them back onto the downside. Very interestingly, we'll see them cross to the downside if we do break below on a 4-hour dildo closing basis the Cyan 89 exponential moving average right here, which is 93.24. So let's see what the same area would be on spot price action as they're actually technically crossing down right now in spot price action. In order to get them to cross back up to the upside, we essentially need to close above the last closing highs that we saw in the 4 hours. So regardless of whether you're bullish or bearish, you are looking for, at the very least, a sideways consolidation here. And for the bears, that does mean that, once again, time is kind of ticking against them. If they do want to confirm this as a local high, do you have to do that probably within this next 48 hours in order to get that confirmed, and then move on back down to the south side. What's also interesting about this is, on spot price action, we do actually have hidden bearish divergence in play as well, with this drive that we saw up yesterday. A higher high was printed on RSI versus the 22nd of June right here, on a much higher high on price action all the way at 9,700 region, which to me is marking off the bearish case a little bit more there. If we do go to a slightly higher term time frame, I'm curious how high this goes up. And do we have the same sort of relevance here? No, actually no. So it only goes to the 4 hour, and I would say that the 4 hours is a little bit more is a little bit more ambiguous, because it is very far away from this price point, and I am using a 14 period on the RSI, so it's only looking back 14 periods. That does still mean that you can probably look back about 28 to maybe another 14 periods beyond that, but it does lose its strength after that. So you wouldn't really expect as much of a down move if it does play out in that fashion. So again, keeping the areas in mind at 92.50 on a closure, I'd at the very least be targeting to move back down to like 9,100, and then I'd want to see it in real time to kind of judge from there. But looking at momentum oscillators, it does suggest that if Bitcoin does put in a local high right here, we do have a little bit of juice to, at the very least, get Bitcoin back down to the 9,100-ish region, of which the 3 hours already coming from the same angle, and will remain to the downside as long as Bitcoin's below, again, the last closing high at 93.50. So this is, does this have the markings of a fake out? It does. To the upside, and I think that I was premature and I was wrong to suggest that Bitcoin taking out 9,300 yesterday was significant in order to propel it to 95.50, 9,600-ish region. The lack of continuation is I wouldn't say it's a major warning signal, but it does make me really want to highlight this area at the $92.50 region as your confirmed fake out region. So if that area gets taken out, very bad. Well, not very bad, but bad for Bulas. But as long as Bitcoin's above it, am I technically supposed to still be looking at 95.50 to 9,600 on a medium-term time frame move? Yes, and that is the way that I would trade, and that is how my options trades are marked off right now. I've got a few spreads running around those critical levels, and I actually bought these spreads, which I very rarely do, but that's mostly due to the historic volatility percentile being at multi-generational lows here. So quite interesting nonetheless. We could also look at I have another read for historical volatility percentile here, which I haven't really been showing all that often. I used to show this a lot in 2018, but where is it? Yeah, there it is. Where's my B-vol? There we go. You can see right here. I think this is just pertains to BitMexico, but we are. Hey, let's go to linear. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Now you can see we are at a region where typically things do turn around and have massive spikes up. How long does it typically stay down around this region? Not very long. Maybe at most another month. Of this bullshit, which means it's time for Forex in traditional markets. So interesting nonetheless. And then of course, if we look at Trollinger Bands width, then we can also bring that another, another what's it called, degree. As if we keep this on a weekly, it's actually not like super low in comparison to what we've seen in the past. If we go to a daily, then you're going to notice that it's incredibly low. In fact, there's only been a few times in history where it's actually been lower than this, but it can certainly get lower than this. It's just how long can it sustain for is a real question. And usually when it does get down to like that last level that we see right here in November 2018, that we saw right here in September 2016, these all probably should be firing off warning shots right now. June 2015 right here. And December 2012 right there. Those are all major pivots on the long term, like here on the lows. I think another one right here. And then kind of we're working our way down towards that right now too. So a lot of things going on right here for Bitcoin. I don't think that Bitcoin's the easiest chart to analyze right now. I think that the easiest chart to analyze is actually Butyrol and then traditional markets. And the strength there does, traditionally bode well for Bitcoin on the long term. But I'd still keep an intentful eyes on those areas, because the lack of continuation while everything else in their fucking mother is rallying right now is a cause for concern. Going to check out Link, as we said, new all-time highs in the tune of, or where's my measure move here? I guess I deleted my drawings here, but let's draw this one out. We have a very obvious ascending triangle right here, and looking pretty damn good. And I imagine that the measure move is probably a little bit more north of where we are right now. Let's just do a really bad drawing on that. Yep, and that'll be pointed towards. Oh, this is versus Satoshis. That's why I did it. I did it priorly on. Hey, get out of the fucking way. I think that's like I can't read that number. I can't read. There we go. I think around like 65,000 Satoshis would be the measure move. Looks pretty damn good there. But let's look at it versus the dollar as well, because I imagine that one's looking pretty damn good too. What's also causing me concern is the fact that altcoins are rallying right now. Altcoins are rallying while Bitcoin is not, and typically altcoins rally last. Now, the strong altcoins rally first, the weak altcoins rally last, and Link is obviously one of the strongest ones. I mean, it's had the best chart for the longest time. Where the fuck is my Link USD chart? I guess I don't have one. I must have deleted it. Well, pour one out. Let's do it right here. Yeah, new all-time highs here as well, and I do believe that we were targeting that move above $5.50. So I don't really have anything to add to that. This is just bullish until it's not. It's in a blue sky breakout, and all momentum oscillators look good. Weekly RSI is looking phenomenal. I'd be looking for it to get back into this region here, around the critical zone. Very, 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 very strong. Let's go check out some of the tier 2, I guess, shitcoins, which would be what I consider like to be Stellar. Stellar still under pressure, does have the death cross on the weekly, but is it flipping around maybe a little bit? As long as it's below the 200 exponential average on the weekly, I do still err to the downside. What about XRP? I hear a lot of people making noise about this one. Wow, how the fuck do you get excited about this chart? What are people looking at that are making them bullish? I mean, it does have bullish divergence here. Maybe it gets a move up to 2,300 Satoshis. I don't think that really would change all that much. I mean, it's still in a downtrend at that point. What about the daily? Do we have the same sort of things? Yeah. Do you have bullish divergence on the daily as well? Yeah. I do think that has some upside here in the short and medium term. Yeah. But is it like reverting a 3-year trend? Probably not. What about XRP versus the dollar? That one's definitely bullish. Nope. Death cross on the weekly, below all major moving averages. All of them have a negative slope. Momentum also is turning down at the same time, rejecting the neutral zone. Weekly RSI looks like absolute dog shit. So yeah, while it probably does rally versus Bitcoin pairing, what does that say if the dollar pairing does not look strong at all? Well, it probably means that just Bitcoin is stagnant. I mean, really. So what do we typically see? When do we typically see something like this? Like when do altcoins typically rally versus Bitcoin? At the end of the market cycle, just like you saw in 2018. Bitcoin had already put in the highs at 20,000 alongside the other top shitcoins, and then they all kind of took their turns through January and March, and then the whole market came down after that. Okay, what else do we have? Do we want to look at? I want to check out a few more altcoins just to get a better nuanced view on this. Let's go check out Litecoin. Litecoin on a weekly, still terrible. What about Litecoin versus Bitcoin? Looks like it has some upside. Actually, looks like it has a decent amount of upside here. Elsa's laughing. What could be so funny? What's so funny, huh? It's got a higher low as well, so decent. Let's see. What about Mr. Buterin versus Bitcoin? We've been bullish on this one actually as well as far as the weekly goes on the Bitcoin pairing. And while it did hit the next target at 0.026 as we spoke about, I do think that this gets extended up to 0.02755. I don't really think that it's. I don't think that's going to stop here. I think that it gets another drive. It's looking good from an RSI perspective and a Stoic perspective, and weekly Joule given all the signals right here on 13th of January, and then again on a HODL signal on June. Actually, just a few weeks ago, out of this space right here, huh? Yeah, so this base right here, so it didn't get the ultimate low, but did get pretty damn close to it. Got the momentum rather well, and then a secondary one right here. So I do like that. Okay, cool. What else do we have? Maybe EOS. What is EOS looking like? Looks like another Ripple Me Nipples. What is this? Declining tops. So if it did get going, yeah, it could very easily have some upside to like 350, but Still looks like a long-term downtrend to me. What about BNB? Wow, that's a weird looking chart. Huh. 200 simple governing the highs for now. I'd be using that as a nice little management point, bearish until it gets back above, at least for the daily. What about GBTC? Haven't looked at this one today, or haven't looked at this one in a little bit. GBTC is very interesting here because GBTC did break to the downside, taking out the lows of this whole consolidation, and now bouncing back up and actually even confirming last week's low as a local low. And I do think that this one has some more upside here. Is GBTC just irrelevant and we should stop talking about it? Probably yes, because I don't think that this is an easy chart to read. And I also don't think that it's accurately representing what's going on in spot. And I imagine that over time, something like this is going to naturally lose its sway anyways, because, well, if Bitcoin does get legitimized, then why would people be investing in a fucking OTC bullshit pink slip stock or half stock rather than just like an actual ETF in traditional markets? I think that's rather clear over time. Oh, we forgot to check out Cardano. Cardano is the other one that I wanted to check out as far as altcoins go. Looks good here. We did say that it was going to move up to 1050, 1030-ish region. We got that, and actually way more. So Jesus, man, powerful. I don't really see too much stopping it from 1375 region, maybe 1400. I do think that it gets another drive here. It's looking decent. It is. It's still looking decent, at least for maybe another try to the upside. Yeah, daily looks like continuation. I don't really think that it's appropriate to be bearish on this read. But let's go check out the dollar pairing. All these things are putting in rallies versus the Bitcoin pairing, but how are they looking at versus the dollar? On a daily, looking good. On a weekly, also looking. Actually, the weekly looks good here too. Oh wow. I never really look at the dollar pairing for this particular one, but does look very likely to head back up to 13 cents, maybe even 16 and a half cents. Looks good there. Okay, fair enough. Probably time to stop talking shit about Cardano here. It has some more upside, yeah. One of the stronger ones for sure. All right, let's see. Did I miss anything? Let's go check out some Forex or some more Forex maybe. I got my pound yen shitcoin here. Looks like it's got some upside. Well, what does the daily look like? Jesus, man, what a fucking dog shit coin. Yeah, probably headed back up to 136. What about Microsoft? Microsoft new all-time highs. Wow, that's crazy. What about Apple? Probably new all-time highs. Whoa, what do you know? New all-time highs. What about Tesla? Oh, baby, show me your girthy green dildo, Mr. Elon Musk, because we are going to the fucking Mars moon of outer space. What the hell, man? Powerful. Very powerful. Very, this is like fucking this really is like 2001 2000 region. This is like 2017 Bitcoin altcoins. That is phenomenal. And I still think that has more to go here. Jesus, man, powerful Mr. Musk. What are the other where's Eurodollar? There it is. We did hit the 200 simple as we spoke about yesterday. Now what do I think? So the target has been met, consolidated at a high level. Golden Cross continues to gain more and more divergence away from each other. I'm bullish on this one too. The problem is that I'm also bullish on the dollar long term, but does this constitute long term if we are looking for a move maybe to like 115, maybe even as much as 118? Yeah, that can still fit into the bigger picture. I mean, really the bigger picture is going to be governed by the by the quarterly here. Yeah, I do think that this one has more upside. 115 very, very likely over the next few months. But realistically, 115, maybe 117 and a half, 118 region, over this next 3 months to maybe half a year. But after that, am I bullish or bearish on this? Probably bearish if I had to guess, because I would still maintain long-term bullishness on Dixie, but just like this one is I'd have to be kind of like bullish on it from that sort of a time frame perspective. Dixie, as you can see right here, I mean, I do think that it probably comes back down to like 95, maybe even 93 and a half region, but overall that's likely going to be a very long-term opportunity. I do like this chart overall from that perspective. So yeah, just meditating on those thoughts for a second, but let's go back to Bitcoin. Let's go get the probabilities for all these moves. And wow, this video is already 47 and a half fucking minutes long. What the hell? I actually emailed YouTube yesterday to ask if my YouTube channel is shadow banned, and they said and they gave me like the most roundabout answer ever. I'm pretty sure that it is, but it's good because I've actually noticed that very few people have been joining this channel. In fact, a lot of people are actually, if anything, numbers have been going down, which of course it does hit your ego a little bit, but at the same time, it's also kind of like a sigh of relief, man. I feel like this place got a little bit too big for too long, and now that we're at the 48-minute mark, I can speak directly to the TA nerds like myself. So you people who are listening right now, this is exactly who I do it for, man, and exactly who I want to be surrounded by, because this is my fucking life. This is my fucking life, man. So it looks like mission accomplished as a community. I think is going to consolidate before breaking out again. But we want to break out in quality, not quantity. That's really the breakout that I'm looking for. Anyways, okay, cool. So let's look at the probabilities of a daily closure below 9250, and then equally I want to look at the probabilities of a move to 9600. Now, I forgot to talk about this, but a closure above 90, even 9550, but definitely 9600, very likely does propel another move towards 9900ish region, give or take about $50 from there. That would be in line with playing out the 2-day hidden bullish divergence. So let's go over to our probability panel over here, and let's see what we're printing. By the way, 53% chance to close above 9300. Nicely done. So let's see. I'm going to do to the upside 9550. I'll be a little more lenient with that one. And to the downside 9250. This is all on a daily closure, by the way. And rings are starting to squeeze once again to the upside. Downside target probability actually outweighs the upside target probability, obviously, because we are only $50 away from the downside resolution. Naturally, that would make sense. Momentum is turning up at the same time. So Bally and Pig's moms has got this one right, and credit to them. Same thing on the 12-hour as well, by the way. And the probability is actually mirroring about the same on the 12-hour, 37 and some odd percent versus 25.29%. For the upside target probability. So remember that the upside target probability obviously relates to a much more interesting move. The downside, not as much now. So it flips around a little bit. The downside probability, if it does get hit with either like a 4-hour closure below 9250 or a daily or any time frame really above a 4-hour below that region, I would target a move back down here towards 9100 or $9,000 base, somewhere in this region right here. But it does not suggest that we're actually going to shatter to the downside and play out the big downside moves as I've been speaking about. In fact, that's a little bit premature now, and I am going to have to humbly accept defeat on that idea, which, oh well. I also want to check in on the 2-day for CMEs. Yeah, CMEs obviously set in a low right here as well. The problem is we don't have a higher low. We don't have a lower low. We have the same low, with the 26th of May low right here on the 2-day, which I forgot to talk about, and now getting kind of stifled at the 10 simple. Am I wrong to be looking at this on a short-term and medium-term likely to pop back up to 95, 96? I think I very well might be. This is still under. I really just don't like this low structure right here. It's very nasty. 3-day looks okay. Are we closing this one tonight? We are. Yes, we are. A 3-day closure above 9400 on CMEs likely does get that next move up as well, and we do have the same sort of hidden bullish evidence present here as well. And yeah, that would be good enough to target a move up to 9800ish region. Yeah, okay, I do like that. All right, so we looked at all that, man. I feel like I've been all over the place today. I do apologize about that, but good morning. Anyways, on the going back down to the lower term time frames, 9250 is kind of my area to watch the downside right now. I suppose I remain cautiously bullish, looking for continuation of 9550, 9600, this blue box territory right here, as long as Bitcoin maintains closures above this area, especially on a 4-hour or above. Does a 2-hour get it done equally as well? No, I think if I was going to use a 2-hour, I would use 9200 or 9225 as a pivot, wherever the 200 simple is, which is 9225 actually. So I think a 4-hour is just easier to follow. And of course, if Bitcoin does if Bitcoin even just takes out the high of what we put in yesterday on 93.75, it looks like on GDAX, then very, 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 very likely we will see that continuation up here. But for now, that's really all that I got. Bitcoin slowly but surely slugging its way through while the rest of the world rallies to fucking to the great heavens. I think with that said, it's time for me to sign off. I'd like to wish you well once again, wishing you the best of the best and the happiest of the happiest, especially for those who've stayed all the way through in a 53-minute long video. Signing off now. Take care, and until next time.